Why is Pakistan always on the brink of collapse? The answer is straightforward. The system itself keeps producing collapse. 4 coups in 77 years since its founding. More than 29 prime ministers, with an average tenure of just 2.7 years. In 2023, foreign exchange reserves plummeted to just over $3 billion, pushing the country to the edge of default. Why is that decisive? This slide explains it all. Political instability is not accidental. A structure in which the military dominates politics and the economy renders civilian governments dysfunctional. Every time a government stabilized, some force intervened. The economic crises, too, are structural. This marks the 24th IMF bailout. Since 1958, Pakistan has received bailouts at an average rate of once every 3 years. And here's the contradiction. A nation holding an estimated 170 nuclear warheads, while its economy teeters on the edge of ruin. This is not coincidence. It is the inevitable result of resource allocation. This is what 7 decades of research in political economy has consistently shown. The pattern of recurring crises, driven by military influence, a weak tax base, and external shocks reinforcing one another, is well documented across a wide body of scholarly work. And this is understandable. Look at the numbers. Follow the institutional design. By the end of this analysis, you'll understand simultaneously why Pakistan doesn't collapse and why it remains perpetually on the brink. Today, let me show you that data. Let's start with the structure of politics. Pakistan was founded in 1947, but within its first decade, democracy had already broken down. In 1958, Ayub Khan carried out the first military intervention. Since then, this pattern has repeated itself. The 4 military interventions continued with Yahya Khan in 1969, Zia-ul-Haq in 1977, and Pervez Musharraf in 1999. What demands attention is not the number of coups, but the intervals between them. Even civilian governments operate under the military's managed democracy. Nawaz Sharif became prime minister 3 times and was removed 3 times. Benazir Bhutto was assassinated in Rawalpindi on December 27, 2007. Imran Khan was ousted by a no-confidence vote in April 2022 and subsequently arrested. And in the 2024 elections, candidates aligned with him won the most votes, yet coalition maneuvering driven by military preferences blocked his return to power. The reality that election results can be effectively overturned is a living demonstration of structural political dysfunction. More than 29 prime ministers is not a record of individual failures. It is the design of the system itself. The military's power doesn't stop at politics. It reaches deep into the economy. The Pakistani military is one of the most economically active armed forces in the world. Military-linked conglomerates, Fauji Foundation, Army Welfare Trust, and others have extensive involvement in cement, fertilizers, food, finance, real estate, and even media. While estimates of their scale vary among researchers, their influence over key industries is widely documented in academic literature. And when you examine the budget structure, an even more troubling picture emerges. In fiscal year 2024-25, Pakistan's defense budget stands at 2.12 trillion rupees. This vastly exceeds the education budget. But what's even more alarming is debt servicing. Debt repayments consume 9.77 trillion rupees, roughly half the entire budget. With defense and debt repayment consuming the lion's share of the budget, investment in education, healthcare, and infrastructure is squeezed out. You might think, can't the people change this through elections? In theory, yes. In reality, it's extraordinarily difficult. Every government that has tried to challenge the military's economic interests has been short-lived, without exception. This is not coincidence. Here is the most critical point. Pakistan's IMF program count grew by 1 more with the approval in September 2024. Among nations in the IMF's records, few have received repeated support at this frequency. In September 2024, the IMF Executive Board approved a $7 billion extended fund facility. This is the latest program. But the price citizens pay is staggering. Record electricity bills and sweeping tax hikes. Protest demonstrations erupted across the country. The IMF demands the same conditions every time: subsidy cuts, tax reform, public sector reduction. These are theoretically sound, but politically, they are extraordinarily difficult to implement. Pakistan's domestic tax revenue remains low as a share of GDP. This is the direct consequence of a system that has long exempted the military, landlords, and business elites from taxation. Before reforms can be completed, the next change of government arrives, and the new government goes back to the IMF for another bailout. In 2023, foreign reserves plummeted to just over $3 billion, pushing the country to the brink of default. IMF loans and other support provided temporary relief, but the country remains in a precarious balancing act, sustained by borrowed funds. This is not fiscal deterioration. It is the inevitable outcome of a structural design. One reason Pakistan doesn't collapse lies in its nuclear arsenal. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's 2024 estimates, Pakistan holds approximately 170 nuclear warheads. While these are estimates, a nation holding nuclear weapons at this scale cannot simply be ignored by the international community. If it collapsed, no one knows where those weapons would end up. That is why external support never fully dries up. Yet at the same time, armed attacks by militant groups within this nuclear-armed state have been rising since 2021. The situation in the northwest and Balochistan is particularly severe. Here lies a telling irony. Pakistan's inter-services intelligence has used the Taliban as a, quote, strategic asset for its Afghanistan policy. Yet the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, a faction of that same Taliban, carries out repeated armed attacks inside Pakistan. With India, Pakistan remains locked in a nuclear standoff over Kashmir. While there are periods of stronger ceasefire compliance, the fundamental conflict continues and tensions can reignite at any moment. This competition with India makes cutting military spending politically near impossible. So why doesn't a Pakistan this vulnerable simply collapse? The answer lies in geopolitical significance. For the United States, Pakistan is an indispensable hub for Afghanistan policy. Substantial support has continued across multiple categories: military aid, economic assistance, and counterterrorism cooperation funding. Even when relations deteriorate, Pakistan cannot be completely written off. For China, there is CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Commitment-based estimates place the project at roughly $62 billion, though progress varies considerably by individual project. Regardless, Pakistan is a strategic partner for checking India. Its collapse would fundamentally undermine China's South Asia strategy. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have provided emergency funding during every major crisis. In other words, Pakistan always has an external safety valve. When pushed to the brink of collapse, someone steps in to rescue it. But here is the fundamental problem. The guarantee of rescue weakens the political incentive to carry out genuine reform. If things will somehow work out without painful transformation, the pressure to transform fades. And so, the state of things not working out persists. None of these elements exist in isolation. They reinforce one another, forming a single, integrated system. Military interference in politics renders civilian governance dysfunctional. Dysfunctional civilian governance leaves fiscal reform perpetually unfinished. Unfinished fiscal reform deepens foreign currency shortages and IMF dependency. Economic deterioration fuels social unrest and creates fertile ground for armed groups. As armed groups and social unrest expand, the military gains further influence under the pretext of maintaining security. This loop has repeated for 77 years. And from outside, support from the United States, China, and Saudi Arabia, each driven by geopolitical interests, keeps this loop running at a survivable level. The existence of nuclear weapons complicates any direct international intervention. Even after the 2024 general elections, partisan conflict and tensions over the judiciary and security apparatus continue, making reform implementation increasingly difficult. Complete collapse doesn't happen. True stability is never achieved. This is what we can call a chronic crisis equilibrium. It seems remarkable that Pakistan hasn't collapsed. But The data reveals a structure that makes collapse impossible. There are always external powers for whom Pakistan's collapse would be intolerable. Let's bring today's analysis together. Here are today's key takeaways. First, the political structure of military dominance. In 77 years since founding, 4 coups, more than 29 prime ministers, and an average tenure of just 2.7 years. Military-linked conglomerates are deeply embedded across key industries, and while debt repayment consumes roughly half the 2024-25 budget, any political challenge to military spending remains extraordinarily difficult. Second, the chain of fiscal dependency. In 2023, foreign reserves plummeted to just over $3 billion, pushing the country to the edge of default. In September 2024, the IMF approved a new $7 billion loan program. The conditions attached, tax increases and energy subsidy cuts, triggered nationwide protests. The vicious cycle of reform and political instability has not been broken, even with the 24th program. Third, the security paradox and external dependency. With an estimated 170 nuclear warheads, armed attacks continue to rise in the Northwest and Balochistan. The United States, China, and Saudi Arabia cannot afford to allow Pakistan's collapse given their respective geopolitical stakes. That external support is precisely what prevents collapse, while simultaneously extinguishing any incentive for reform. If you were Pakistan's leader, could you simultaneously resolve all 4 of these constraints? And as long as external powers exist for whom collapse is unacceptable, this chronic crisis equilibrium is self-sustaining. This is not a story of a failed state. It is a structural inevitability produced by geopolitical interests. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. This channel analyzes the why behind complex nations like Pakistan through the lens of geopolitics, economics, and history. Not emotion, but facts. Not opinion, but mechanism. This is how we dissect the architecture of the world. Subscribe to gain the analytical framework to read the world clearly. Turn on notifications, and every new analysis published will deepen your understanding of the world by one more level. Until next time.